It's a good way to start the podcast.
I am here with Matt Sydal. Matt, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Raj. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for being on. It's last time I saw you, we were in Barbados. It was early March, I think, and a lot's happened since then.
Yeah, I mean, everything has changed since then. That was such a great, that was the last event I did. We did that show in Barbados, and then the next week we were all expected to go to Las Vegas for Ring of Honor. I was doing past versus present, and it turned out that that got canceled due to coronavirus, and I haven't had a match since. I mean, it's been a complete change of lifestyle, but I think it's been really beneficial to me, someone who's still kind of dealing with some neck and shoulder injuries. I've just been able to stay home and rehabilitate myself, and I really, man, I feel like I definitely have, maybe it's not my second win, maybe it's my third win coming, but I really do feel good these days.
Nice. That's great to hear. I was going to ask how you've been handling the pandemic. So you haven't wrestled once since then, huh?
No, nothing. And I mean, I'm in Florida, so things here are just a little bit hairier than they are in other places, or maybe more rural places that didn't have it. We've kind of been under the gun since, I think they canceled schools in April, and then, it's just been a really quiet summer. I in my house, I've got 2 roommates, and so everybody's had to be very careful because, we all have grandparents and parents. We just take it seriously. I mean, when it comes to pro wrestling, I'm all about safety. I think there should be mats on the outside, safe guardrails, all these things. So it's no surprise that I'm a mask wearing enthusiast.
Yeah, well, we are too. How do you think the promotions have been handling running during this pandemic? WWE, AEW, Impact have been running. New Japan just started back up, and ROH is about to start back up.
Yeah, well, I think, New Japan handled it extremely well and professionally. I know they were very cautious. The Japanese styles, they really do have concern for their neighbors kind of more than themselves. So I think they did a really good job of that. From what I've known about WWE, it doesn't seem like they were too concerned about the wrestlers getting sick. I think they kind of downplayed the illness and downplayed that. I mean, I don't think they were putting the safety of their wrestlers first, or even their fans out there. But I mean, seems to not have too many side effects. Plus, we know that all these corrupt politicians are fighting so that way companies don't have any responsibility, even if people do get sick. I think AEW, 2 of my students have been going up there to do AEW Dark. Fabu, Andre, and Tony Donati, I'll just name drop them because they're really hardworking students of mine at the Side Dojo. And they've been going up there and they've been getting coronavirus tests every time they go up. So I know that's been a very, that's what you have to do to run a show. And I'm not going to release the entire Ring of Honor protocol, but there is no company that is taking this more seriously than Ring of Honor. And also the Maryland State Athletic Commission is really holding them to the highest of high standards. Crazy things from like changing the canvas between every match at their upcoming tapings, to only allowing 2 wrestlers in a locker room at a time. Coronavirus tests, I took one on Friday, and then I'll take one when we fly out on Monday, and one when I depart on that Sunday. So I'll be doing 3 tests for the Ring of Honor, just to really make sure that we're safe and everything's going good. And that way we can really just let loose and wrestle without any kind of thing in the back of our head. But yeah, it's disappointing to not wrestle in front of fans, because I don't wrestle for myself. I really do wrestle for them. And so I'm just glad that the Ring of Honor stuff we're doing will be on TV, so that way everybody can see all the hard work we're putting out next week.
Yeah, so you are in the ROH Pure Title Tournament. That title was retired, I believe it was 2006. It's been a long time.
Yeah, I was in Ring of Honor like 2004 to 2006 when it was like Nigel McGuinness versus Chad Collier. I mean, I witnessed a lot of really good pure title matches. And to be honest, back then I wasn't even in the contendership for that belt, mainly because the technical wrestlers, not only were they like, I've always prided myself on my technical abilities, but it really came down to a size and strength thing. And just like guys like Nigel would just kind of run through me at that time. A lot of things have changed, and I really feel like this is a championship that I kind of belong with, I vibe with. When I went to Impact, I went straight after that X Division title. when I'm going to Ring of Honor this time. I'm really going directly for the pure title. Previously, I went after the TV championship, the ROH TV title, and I lost to Jay Lethal. And I also went up against Marty, and I lost to Marty. So I really feel like gonna go find a nice niche for myself inside this pure title bracket and this kind of focus on in-ring wrestling, which is my specialty. But the beautiful thing is with the pure title, they add in a lot of rules, but it actually opens up a lot more doors. Or, you know, if that door shuts, it's going to open up windows for us. And I'm really good at, let's say, bending the rules in my favor. And I think it provides a creative opportunity for me, because the more rules there are, the more rules that I get to bend.
Absolutely. So with ROH, is this kind of a short-term gig? Are you back with them? I mean, how much can you divulge right now?
Well, so ROH is a lifelong gig for someone like me. You know, I started indie wrestling in the year 2000, and there was only one mecca. There was only one iconic place where wrestling was respected and revered and honored. And I got into wrestling based on that, like, pursuit of respect. Oh man, that was some powerful thunder. I got into it based on that respect and like that, the pure, I mean, ironically, the pureness of the wrestling of Ring of Honor. That's what really attracted me to it. And I mean, I was just a kid in college daydreaming of getting to Ring of Honor when I think it was my sophomore, my junior year. I kind of got my first opportunities to start working at Ring of Honor, and I was there for about 2 years, and then I started doing Dragon Gate, went to WWE, left there, came back to Ring of Honor, did that. So I mean, like, Ring of Honor has just been this constant thread in my life that always has pushed me, and I've always found great opponents there and great talent there. So while I'm not under any contract right now, it has always been a home for me and a place where I've felt really comfortable and really respected. And that's really one of the most important things you can do, is have a workplace that respects you, and you have a nice tri-mutual respect. I don't know how with three people, true, but there's the office, the wrestling, and the fans. So it's a respect of all three of those angles. You know, a place like New Japan does that really well, honoring their fans, honoring their wrestlers, and honoring the traditions that came before them, while still trying to push the envelope of the present, like, as far as you can go. So I really feel like Ring of Honor is an ideal place for me. And I wrestle on a lot of the indies around the country, and I wrestle a lot of young up-and-comers, but I really don't think anyone can push me like the talent that's in Ring of Honor right now.
Yeah. Had you been talking with any other promotions during that time, like during this pandemic, during your downtime?
Well, you know, I don't really, I mean, promotions aren't people, you know, promotions are just three letters. I'm always about the boys in the back. So for me, I don't have loyalty to a company. I have loyalty to, like, the boys in the back, and our boys includes the girls, of course. But really, it's just, for me, I need a specific schedule to work with what I have going on with my injuries. And that's why I haven't been trying to beat down the door of any organization, because I haven't felt this good until now. If I'd been wrestling throughout the pandemic, I think I would still be going 2 steps forward and then 3 or 4 back, and then make a little progress and then fall back. And so this has just allowed me to really focus on improving myself and trying to recreate that time where I was once made out of cement, and get back to that, you know, strong body, strong mind, strong heart. And yeah, I just, you know, I really have a independent spirit and an independent mind. I've loved being an independent wrestler. I like being the boss, so I can be the boss of myself, and it really in control of my schedule and what I'm doing. And but I feel like the fans want to see their favorite wrestlers on TV. So I feel like this kind of obligation to make sure I get my face on a TV show somewhere where the fans can find it, even if it's just on YouTube or whatever it is. I just want to make sure that they can see all the hard work I'm putting in, because I'm not just doing it to go watch myself and put up a bunch of pictures of myself in my house. You know, I really am doing all this work to provide some content for people, and content that they want to keep their eyes on.
Now, you are an experienced veteran, one of the greatest high flyers of this era. But with WWE and AEW signing so much talent, How do you think that impacts some of the younger talent on the indies, as they have less veterans to work with and experienced workers to learn from?
Wow. Well, I mean, like that's such a good point. I think when I started, the best gifts that I ever got were getting to wrestle the veterans on the scene. Like the first person that ever kicked my ass was Kid Cash, and it took me out of my local bubble immediately, because if he hadn't have put that hurting on me, and then after the match told me, "Hey, your act works here in St. Louis, it works in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, but what you're doing is not going to cut it. In Philadelphia, they'll eat you alive. In New York City, you don't stand a chance." And that really lit a fire underneath me. Supporting people is really important, but also being honest with them, an honest assessment of the person. As wrestlers, we always have a delusional self-assessment. Wow, I'm huge, I'm jacked, I'm the star. Did you hear all those people? They were clapping for me. A veteran is going to give a guy a reality check that he can't get. I was lucky. Jamie Noble was not in WWE for a little while. He came down to the indies and worked with me and changed my perspective on how I saw wrestling, on how I was thinking of my matches, and basically made me re-examine everything that I was doing. Now I think a lot of wrestlers want to get signed so that way they can be with a company where they can learn, but they're really kind of looking for a contract. And I do think that makes sense, but I really think wrestling with pure intentions, just wrestling to be a better wrestler, eventually you will get there when the time's right. For example, someone like Ricochet could have been signed to WWE at any time, from 2014, 2012, 13, 14, 15. He was a indie star having the best matches going on and on, but it just wasn't the right time for him to go because he was still growing and maturing on the indies. Had he been signed early, he might have gone to WWE too early, like some other people, and made a handful of mistakes that could have, kept him from being a millionaire. And I'll tell you what, Ricochet's well on his way to doing that. And it just shows that by not trying to get a contract too soon, he waited it out and had ideal timing. I mean, another guy, it's an example, is like Trevor Lee. Both these guys are insanely talented, but they just had to wait for the right moment before they went to a larger organization. But yeah, I mean, you don't want to end up being an indie wrestler who wants to be the big fish in a small pond. I always wanted to be the worst wrestler on the shows I was on so I could just learn from the guys above me. And that's a great thing. That's a great way to be in your first few years of wrestling. And then, your contract will come because the cream always rises to the top here.
Yeah. You mentioned Ricochet. What are your thoughts on how WWE is using Ricochet right now? Because he did seem like he was on the way up. He's an outstanding talent, amazing, does stuff we've never seen. And then it seems like he kind of gets that same treatment that a lot of guys get, where they give you something for a month and then they kind of bring you down.
Well, I mean, the WWE, it's like there's only room for 2 people at the top or 4 people at the top. And those are guys with 20, 25 years invested in WWE time. So as his investment grows over time, you look at a guy, for example, a gentleman like Kofi Kingston. It may have taken 10 years for him to become champion, but that's the exact right amount of time it takes, because you can't just walk in and I mean, they used to love to boost people to the moon, like Sheamus, come in, boom, okay, you're the star, force feeding people that. But really what builds fandom is having fans fall in love with you when they're 10 years old. And by the time those fans are 22, you've built this body of work. And then when you finally do win the belt, Tommy Dreamer style, people lose their minds and go crazy. And that enthusiasm is really there. And I just think there's really no rush with these guys. As long as you're working and you're performing in front of the crowd, there's no difference to me between the guy who's like the top, if you're the first match or the last match. I mean, as long as you're working hard and putting out good work, it's more important that you're in front of the audience. It's not necessarily as important that you're the top act or you're booked in some crazy way where you never take a loss. I mean, of course, I would, if it was up to me, I would never have Ricochet lose a match ever. Just like I would do if I was in charge. I would never have the Young Bucks lose a match or the Briscoe brothers lose a match. I would just keep those guys as I would feed everybody to them. But in WWE, Ricochet's he's going to get fed and fed and fed. But then eventually it'll be his time to eat. And he's the kind of guy who can fight through these times like really get a really strong grassroots following that will support him when that time comes, when they're like, oh shit, we could put the title on him, and then his fandom will essentially assault the office, and then they'll have no choice, as they did with Daniel Bryan, but to give him the ball and let him run with it.
Yeah. You mentioned Kofi Kingston. What was it like teaming with Kofi back in the day? You guys are former tag team champions.
Yeah, I mean, we had so much fun. Like, I remember when Kofi and Punk were tag champions, I remember just thinking, man, me and Kofi, we could do this too. Like, we would have a really good tag team. Sort of the three of us traveled together a little bit. And yeah, tagging with Kofi was easy. And he was just so open to all the ideas. I mean, I would just be in the corner during the match. Like, we'd be wrestling Primo and Epico, and I would just be shouting ideas at him. Hey, hang him up on the ropes like this. I'm going to jump up. And I mean, we could just do it. We would have that nonverbal communication as well. So in addition to the verbal communication, we also had this nonverbal communication where you would know where your opponent, you would know where your partner is without really having to look back. You know, I don't think you'd ever see us kind of do one of these. We weren't missing tags unless we meant to. Then we'd miss just a tip. But yeah, I mean, we really had fun. And like, the best thing about teaming with Kofi was sort of his lighthearted approach to it, and his like just the way he would bring joy to fans. And I mean, really, when we went out there, we were going out there to put smiles on faces, to get the kids in the crowd the excitement that they wanted. And I mean, really, you know, it's always been about delivering for the fans, and that's what, you know, Kofi and I were really able to get that going, especially at a time where it was sort of an underrepresented idea of having kind of two smaller guys tagging together in a world where there were a lot of big heavyweights in the tag division. Teaming with Kofi was great, but, you know, like, I love tag team wrestling. I've always felt it's my specialty. Tag team matches, 6-man tags are my favorite style of matches. So, you know, I've just had the fortune of having a like handful of excellent tag partners that led me up to Kofi, and then since Kofi as well. So, you know, it's just, this is part of my good fortune to have partners like that.
Another thing with your WWE run, I know you get asked this all the time, was that RKO you took, the Shooting Star Press and the RKO. Was that something you had been thinking about for a while when you knew? I mean, I don't know how far in advance you knew you were going to wrestle Orton, if it was that day, or if you knew in advance. And is that something you had been planning out for a while, or did it just kind of come together that day?
Well, so it was one of these things. I had been on a show in Highland, Indiana, an indie show. I was IWA Mid-South, and it was M-Dog 20 and B-Boy. And M-Dog went for the shooter, and B-Boy hit him with the cutter, and the place exploded. And then so we were on tour in Ohio area, and M-Dog was actually an extra at the show. And I had mentioned to Randy on Sunday, because it seemed like we were leading to a Money in the Bank match. Mm-hmm. And I had sort of mentioned that would be something I would want to do in the Money in the Bank match, and mentioned it to Randy. And that was Sunday. And then on Monday, we went out there and did it. So, I mean, it was like beautiful, perfect timing. And, you know, it was great because it was a move that I had established. It's a move that he had established. We had this, like, it wasn't just two random people just doing it for fun. It really was two people's specialties, like, colliding. Of course, Randy got the best of me. You know, maybe if I had just moved a little bit to the left, that I had him. But, you know, I don't want to take all the credit for it. One, not my idea. And two, if you watch the way it was filmed perfectly. It was shot flawlessly. Randy goes down, they cut to me climbing, but the climbing shot is super, super tight. You almost forget that Randy's there. He's out of the picture. And it's not until I jump that they cut to the second shot, and then you can see Randy popping out of nowhere and catching me. It was art. It was masterfully shot. It was just the perfect moment. And I mean, every single night we go out there and try and create a moment like that. Every single night you try and make that magic happen. But this one, all the stars lined up. Randy was perfect. My jump was just where it needed to be. The guys behind the scenes had it orchestrated so beautifully that, I mean, all I had to do was jump, and the rest wrote itself.
So did they know, like the guys in the back, did they know to look for that spot? Like were the camera guys prepared, and Kevin Dunn, or did it just happen? Did they just happen to capture it perfectly?
No, I mean, that was the WWE production wizardry. I mean, they knew that this is how you, I mean, I love the super tight shots of guys on top. I really like the way they did the camera work on this is how I wish wrestling was always filmed, because it really does kind of, it brought the wrestling like right into your living room with excitement, and it allowed a surprise to happen in a world where we can always see what's coming. Like the guy goes like this and he runs into the corner. It's like,
right.
So much of wrestling is so obvious. This was one of those moments that you couldn't see it coming, and then everything lined up really well. So I mean, that's like from Stu and Marty, the cameramen, to Kevin Dunn in the back, they knew how to frame this spot in a way where, I just die. But it was, I'd rather go out on my sword and provide a memory like that than anything else. I mean, it really is essentially the pinnacle of my career, because it is the most memorable thing. And really, I mean, that's what we're really trying to do, is create that moment. I mean, as a kid growing up, my brother liked The Rock, but I liked D'Lo Brown. It wasn't necessarily about being on top for me. It was about creating memories. And really, what's even more powerful than the move and all that happened, it was people sitting at home with their friends and family. Their reactions and their memories of it mean just as much as anybody else's. Like, that's what was really special about it, is what it meant to the people watching.
Yeah, absolutely. Randy Orton obviously has just been having a banner year this year. What was it like working with Randy?
Oh, I loved it. He and I are both from St. Louis. Like, one of my best friends was one of the guys that helped him get started at the South Broadway Athletic Club way back in the day, kind of his first few bumps in the ring, and his first power bomb ever was to my friend, who's still uses that as his claim to fame. I got power bombed by Randy Orton. But in fact, his dad, Cowboy Bob, was a Missouri State Athletic Commissioner. So a couple times when Randy was in OVW and even maybe on the main roster, he would come to these shows that, I would be wrestling delirious in a car, like a body shop garage that had just enough room for a ring and like fans on one side. And, we remember him sitting up there watching the show. So, it's sort of kind of been there since day one for me. And, I really liked working with him. I always thought that there was even more potential to Randy than had been unleashed. I think a lot of people are intimidated wrestling him. I think even like guys like The Miz were a little intimidated wrestling Randy, kind of almost afraid of him. And I didn't really have that, because he was always kind and, generous with me. So, he may have been, sometimes I think towards fans or whatever, especially early on and young in his life, that there was some issues, but really the way he treated the other wrestlers was very respectfully, and always was trying to like invite me, hey, come to the movies. Where all the guys are going to the movies on Sunday. Let's all go out to eat. When for some reason he had a reputation as kind of being like a egotistical hard guy, I always found it to be just the opposite.
Yeah. Have you been watching much WWE during this time off?
No.
Okay.
I mean, I kind of enjoy NXT, but I don't watch any stuff that's not a live event that I'm on. I can't. I have a problem with the way everything's produced, and I watch AEW Dark because my students are on it, but I don't watch. I mean, I watch some UFCs, but I don't really turn on the TV much. It's just not for me. And really, if I wanted to wrestle like everybody else, I would watch all the wrestling that everybody else watches. But you'll catch me watching some old All Japan Classic or some New Japan Classics or some Best of the Super Juniors or some awesome AAA. But what I enjoy, like the music I like, is just not the mainstream music that's on the radio channels that everybody tunes into. I just tune into a little bit different channel, and I enjoy being able to curate my own collection of wrestling rather than having to watch whatever new content gets crammed down everybody's throat.
Right. Yeah, I was just going to say, because WWE's in-ring style, it's just changed a lot, NXT especially. I don't know if it's changed, but it just seems like you'd be allowed to do a lot more there now, at least in NXT for sure, than when you had your run.
Yeah, well, there's just more guys to I mean, like one of my dreams in life was to wrestle Claudio on Monday Night Raw, Cesaro. And if I had been able to do that, I mean, I think we would have just blown, people's brains would have exploded. That was just kind of a match that I wanted to have that I could never have because I didn't have, I'm a flyer. Every flyer needs a base. It just doesn't, you can't fly with one wing, essentially. One wing won't fly. And so I had to, when I got to WWE, I readjusted my entire style. I had been wrestling in Dragon Gate 5 nights a week, hitting the craziest ranas, taking, crucifix head scissors, giving deja vu head scissors, just all the madness. And I just had to retune it up because the guys I was wrestling just didn't do that style. And it didn't really bother me much. But yeah, now, I mean, there's a dozen plus guys that I would just love to have matches with, from the NXT UK guys, the NXT guys right now, the guys that moved up to the main roster. I'd like to wrestle Uha, Ricochet. I mean, there's so much talent there. They have probably twice or three times as many people under contract. So I love that there's 2 times, 3 times as many jobs going out there because all these guys are talented. They all deserve to make a living in wrestling. And I was sort of worried how they would if WWE wasn't going to be hiring the best wrestlers, if they were only going to be hiring guys that fit what they were looking for. And I think Triple H really understood that the indies were getting so hot, it was going to drive business. And so he used that style and that ability to connect with fans and develop. I mean, it's a genius thing. You looked at when I was there at WWE, they had 2 brands touring full-time, SmackDown and Raw. How do you increase your profits and revenue if you're maxed out with 2? They managed to build a 3rd brand and sell the TV rights, sell live events, grow, and not have to pay the guys nearly as much as they're paying Raw and SmackDown talent. It's genius. It's brilliant. And the fans deserve it. The fans who wanted an alternative deserved an opportunity to see guys. And without, it's not a fan's responsibility to find Japanese wrestling or to find whatever. So it's just nice that WWE is the one exposing these guys to stuff that I've been enjoying and I've been loving for 20 years. And so I don't care who's putting it on display as long as somebody is. That's why I love AEW and what Tony Khan's done. I mean, he took something. When I left WWE, it was my dream, my goal, my intention to start a federation for the indie guys, get them on TV, because I believe that the Bullet Club was $1 billion organization that wasn't even on American TV. So if you put them on TV, you're going to make $1 billion. And I was looking for investors. I had one guy fall out, but I'm just thrilled that AEW is just, they say, hey, we're a new league, we're on TV, and they're exposing people to this type of wrestling that I love and I think the whole world should be sharing.
Yeah, that is interesting. I did not know that. Yeah, it seems like a lot of people have been wanting this style of wrestling for a while, and it took a while to get there. Now, with your high-flying style and everything, have you changed your style over the years? I mean, I know you have from the beginning, but since WWE, have you found yourself changing your style?
100%, completely. One of my favorite quotes is "Unlearn something every day." It's an Alan Watts quote. And when I left WWE, I would go to these shows and essentially I was giving the Triple H. Triple H was so generous to me with his time and his knowledge when I was the young up-and-comer wrestling Chavo on every live event. After my matches, he would come back and give me a list of things to work on, which is exactly what I see going on in NXT, how they're adopting high flyer style to the WWE audience and how they slow down and basically how WWE NXT does their stuff is the advice that Triple H was giving me. And that's great, but it includes a lot of assumptions that I feel they're not necessarily false, but they don't have to be true either. I was down in Peru and I was watching AAA in Spanish on my TV, and it blew my mind because they weren't following any of the rules, yet the crowd was still there. It was wild and it was just as valid. So I don't think one type of wrestling is right and one type of wrestling is wrong. And I've used that like ability to unlearn what I've done and really go back and get back in touch with that Dragon Gate style, since now there's a lot of guys that can work with that. And I really feel like, you know, what I'll be doing now is more Dragon Gate pro wrestling related than WWE style. But of course, you know, if I'm wrestling in front of 80,000 people at WrestleMania, it will feel like a WWE style thing. It's just because that's how they frame it and that's what they put out there. But yeah, I mean, what I do now is just completely original, all new shtick, all new act. Everything's different. I don't rely on any of my old stuff. I mean, I think it's boring. I wouldn't want to go see a comedian if he was using the same jokes. So I'm not going out there trying to do the same thing. That, and, you know, my body's changed, my life's changed. And really, what if people have already seen me do something 1,000 times, 1,001's not going to impress anybody. But reinventing it, rethinking it, coming at it from a new angle. That's sort of what drives me to always be back in the gym, working at my dojo, just trying to figure out a new way to give it to fans where, like, when Randy hit that RKO on me, it got people to actually jump up out of their seats. Like, you get them to the edge of their seats, that's good. But if you can get them to jump out of their seats, that's great. And so that's what I'm looking for. And to me, it doesn't matter how it comes or where or why. It's like, it just requires that creative spark to come up with it, because that way nobody can see it coming.
What is kind of the natural evolution for high flyers when it comes to you know, ring work? With you, it did seem like you were starting to become more. You were developing more character, like an Impact and things like that, and creating a persona. It seems like that happens a lot, where you'll see a lot of people just with the high flying at the beginning, showing off their athletic ability, and then kind of moving more to being a character. I don't know if that's accurate or.
Yeah, well, I mean, just like I've always felt that, you know, you're a wrestler, no matter what your character is, you're a wrestler first. My student, you know, if you come in and you're like, hey, I want to be the mailman and I'm going to deliver mail, I say that's all fine, but you got to learn, you got to be a wrestler that was a mailman. You're not both, and you're certainly not. Nobody's going to tune in to see a mailman wrestle. They want to see a wrestler with a character that does something, but you gotta have your street cred first. You gotta be able to, you know, essentially win a match and have those abilities. So I think what I was doing in the beginning was just not showing off, but just displaying like all the work that you put in, all the time, all the studying, all the grinding away and getting beat up at the gym over and over and over again. So you know, the character isn't as essential unless you have a microphone in front of you and you've got something to say, or you're in the middle of a storyline, and then how your character deals with it. But, you know, I think every fighter, every wrestler shows a lot of character based on what they do, not necessarily like what you say is one thing, but how you act in the ring. That is your character. Are you the guy who lays on the ground, or are you the guy who gets back up? And, you know, I've always wanted to be the guy that gets back up.
Now, it just recently came out that WWE purchased Evolve, and now they're putting Evolve on the network. You had wrestled for Evolve last year. What were your thoughts on them buying the promotion?
I mean, that was all Evolve had left. I mean, they weren't really it wasn't very successful. And I mean, it was the lowest pay that I've ever gotten in 5 or 6 years. I just did it because I didn't have work that weekend, and it would have been cool. Like, and there's good wrestlers there, and at that time, I was running the WWN training school, co-running it with some bum. But yeah, I was, you know, it just was easy. It was good work. And I really like Leon Ruff and AR Fox's guys. So I just wanted to go in there and work with them. I wasn't trying to get anything out of it or do anything. It's just a match. You know, people try and make it a big deal, but, you know, a show's a show, work's work. And, you know, if you haven't wrestled in New York in a couple months, it's always good to take a book in there, because there's a lot of great wrestling fans up there. And, yeah, I mean, I'm just glad for Evolve to get that deal. You know, I think it's always good when they get there's kind of like, we were talking earlier about how indie guys want to get a contract now. Like, that's sort of the goal. When I started, there was no hope of getting a contract. There was no hope of doing anything. The only hope you had of becoming a star was taking your own organization and growing it to be the next ECW or something like that. Which, for example, PWG got started around the same time, and they grew their own thing so big that it basically expanded to its own TV deal with TNT through AEW. So I always respected the guys who were trying to do it on their own without taking a handout from a big organization. They were trying to create their own thing, the DIY style, which has sort of always been my style, kind of makeshift survival mode, and really just kind of creating your own, forging your own path. I mean, right now, like, that's exactly what I do. I kind of do my own thing. It may not be the most popular thing online, but you know, I believe in what I'm doing. I believe in what I'm creating at my dojo. I believe in what I'm creating and sewing in our sewing room right over there, where I'm working on a new pair of tights for myself for my upcoming ROH stuff, and making my own ring jacket, and just really having, you know, my hands are in every stitch of everything that I do. So when you see me throw an arm drag, that's how I do my arm drags. Nobody else will do it like me, unless they're my students who I've forced to do it my way. And then they can go out and learn their own way. But I really think, like, the thing about wrestling is everybody gets so stuck on right and wrong. And, well, my take is that that's a wrong mindset for it. And it really is. It's all about the end viewer and how they feel. And, you know, you can't please everybody, but there's something about wrestling fans. They love to torture themselves, watch wrestling they hate, and then write about how much they love to hate it. And it's just this weird fetish that they have to just, like, trash what they love somehow. And maybe if wrestling would just give them one kiss, they'd be happy and they'd love it for forever. But, you know, that's why me being in control of my own thing, I don't have to worry about what anybody else says or does. I do wrestling my way, my style, for my friends and family, and I don't have to really compromise or change anything. I can just kind of take risks and fail, and take risks and succeed. And it's just a different mindset than everybody. You know, if you start now, you can get to NXT. Like, my students, I feel strongly that I have 2 or 3 kids that can be in NXT in a year or two. When I started, there was no, like, it was like, maybe you can get to Ring of Honor if you're one of the few lucky ones, or maybe if you know somebody. But now it's, like, not about knowing somebody. It really is about putting in the hard work, and kind of, I think part of it is, like, engaging fans online and building a following through there. And, you know, that can lead to a lot of success.
Yeah. We got some fan questions on Twitter, but before we get to that, I did want to ask you, you have your dojo, sidedojo.com. You're returning to the ring for the ROH Pure Title Tournament. What are your goals with the dojo, and what are your goals with your pro wrestling career in general?
Well, I just want to make, you know, have some fun wrestling. You know, let's enjoy pro wrestling. It's a famous catchphrase of Kikutaru, famous Japanese comedy wrestler, and one of my closest buddies, just a guy I've always loved. And the truth is, you know, a lot of people find wrestling through a hard time in their life, and it just becomes something that's really there for them. So that's why it's hard for me when people feel like wrestling's betrayed them, or not listening to them, or not respecting them, because a lot of us become wrestling fans when the real world's kind of a little hard to face. And so you kind of have this nice escape into wrestling. And, you know, that's what I provide for my students, man. Some of these guys, they deliver boxes for Amazon all day, or they wrench on cars all day. But then there's those 2.5 hours where we're training and nothing else matters. It all just fades away, and we can just enjoy pro wrestling. You know, it's like a common thing that we all share, and then we just kind of find what we love about it, and harness that and focus on that. And I want to eventually create some really good content out of my dojo. I've got some ideas that might fail, and ideas that might be adopted by everybody in the business over time. But, you know, we're just going to get out there and swing. We're going to get out there and take swings and take chances. And I'd really like these young men and women who work really hard in my dojo to make a living wrestling. That's my goal. Like, my goal when I really wanted to create an organization, a wrestling organization, so that I could give people jobs, because I just thought there was so much talent. And because there weren't that many jobs out there, people were having to work for very low rates. I mean, like, these guys would go work for Evolve for, let's just call it pennies, very little money, but they did it because they believed in wrestling and they loved it. But I always felt that, boy, those are the people I want to get paid the most. So I wanted to find guys like that and find somebody who can pay him, which is what Young Bucks and Cody have done with Tony Khan. They've found the acts that really deserve this opportunity and shined a spotlight on them.
Yeah, absolutely. So I got some fan questions here. Are you ready?
Yeah, sure. I can't wait. I don't get any fan questions ever on Twitter. So
Someone's asking why you prefer Cecil Whitaker's pizza to Emos?
Emos. Wow, this is a St. Louis legend question. It's interesting that they know I like Cecil Whitaker's more, but it's only because I grew up where, like, if I cut through the creek behind my house and walked a little ways, I could get to Cecil Whitaker's Pizzeria. And they had, video games there that you could play for a quarter. Or you could get like a lunch pizza special for $4.25. And so, yeah, that's where I would kind of walk to go have lunch when I was like a teen, youth kid. And it's just part of my childhood. Emo's Pizza is not bad, but it's all thin crust. Both of these places sell thin crust pizza, which I love, but many people are not big fans of.
Yeah, I'm a fan myself, but
okay, cool.
What were your best and worst moments in WWE?
I think my worst moment was like one time I did the double knees off the top and I like rolled, but I ended up falling out of the ring and then not coming back in the ring for what we had planned next. Is just that just eats away at me for an eternity. Cause I pride myself on never missing a cue or anything like that. It was just one time, but I'll never, ever get over it. Best moments would be the European tours. The European fans were just so thankful for us to be there. And I really got to go out and have the type of matches I really wanted to have. Wrestling Chavo, wrestling Chris Jericho. And those were just and then like I wrestled Rey Mysterio at where was that? So at a, I don't remember which venue it was in Japan, but I wrestled him in Japan and had one of the best matches of my life there. So the international tours were really special to me. They were the hardest work I'd ever done, but it really was something I didn't even care how much we were working or how banged up we were. It was just like it was dream come true wrestling because I really felt respected in what I was doing, almost more so than I really even deserved. And the tours paid, and I was on shows with unbelievably high level professionals who were sitting there watching my matches and giving me advice. And just, it was like nothing I could have ever imagined. I mean, my goal when I started wrestling, I went to an indie show when I was 16 and the first match had like a jobber character in a mask and then two other guys in a three-way match. And my goal was to someday, if I trained for 5 or 10 years, someday I could be that guy that was the jobber in the match. Like that's how high my expectations were for myself. So I would sit back and like some of these venues, you could kind of sneak up onto the roof and kind of climb out on like the rafters and look down and just see this WWE ring, which is like an energetic source of like magic, and this crowd filling up the entire arena, and just being there watching like these main events was, I mean, that's, if you told young Matthew when he first showed up at wrestling training that would be his life, I would have never believed it. And really nobody else would have either.
Yeah. Another question here. Do you think a Wrestling Society X revival would work?
I think that's what Lucha Underground was. It was a continuation of Wrestling Society X, and it was awesome. It exposed the world to some of the best wrestlers, exposed the world to a true Lucha Libre style and creative art form of storytelling that allowed you to suspend your disbelief even during like weird magic sequences. But they really approached it with such a creative, that's what WSX was trying to do. They were trying to do a creative way of presenting wrestling with new wrestlers that weren't like stars somewhere else. And that's what Lucha Underground did. And I mean, Conan is one of the smartest people I've ever been around in wrestling. And he's just got this brilliant eye for great wrestlers, how to produce great wrestling, and what fans want as well. So, like, I mean, that's the main reason I wished I had been on Lucha Underground, was just to work with Conan more, and plus Ricochet and Ray Phoenix were there, Shane Strickland. I mean, there was just massive amounts of talent on that.
Yeah. Someone else is asking, with the independent unsigned workers and wrestlers in your dojo, how are they able to make a living during situations like this with no one booking shows?
Well, none of my guys would make a living if they were working 5 shows a week. There's not a living in it. they're doing it because they love wrestling. Any independent wrestler who wants to make money doing independent wrestling should really have an e-commerce gig doing something else, because then that will allow you to actually wrestle with your heart and not with your mind. Because if you're wrestling like, oh, what'll do this to draw money, it's not how things work. You have to wrestle with your heart, and then what comes out is something that will eventually draw money over time. But really, it's just a learning process. So yeah, like I said, they deliver for Amazon. They crank on cars all day. Then they go out and work every night. And I mean, like, some of these guys, they get the call to go do AEW Dark. They got to make up some excuse to cut work and go out there. And I mean, that's what I was doing. You know, I was a Ring of Honor wrestler for 2 or 3 years. Then I started wrestling in England and Germany, and I was still working. I would work my 40 hours Monday through Thursday, and then go travel Friday, Saturday, Sunday, get back to work on Monday, and just grind. I mean, a lot of people talk about the grind in wrestling. You know, the Briscoes were always these guys that talked about how you got to grind. And I mean, the Briscoes, they're extremely successful wrestlers, but they still have their landscaping business and their chicken farm and these other things, because wrestling doesn't just give you a living. Nobody's entitled to it. So yeah, my guys, they're just going to keep working, and, you know, we're going to try and create our own things so that way we can pay our bills, because you can't rely on somebody else to just sign you to a contract and pay you. You got to earn every penny.
I'm going to try to tone this one down a little bit. Do you see an end to this pandemic with the politics the way that they are?
Well, I'll be honest, I was more optimistic about how the pandemic was going to be handled. Like, for example, I didn't expect Florida, where I live, to just go so far south. I just think, you know, my plan on the pandemic went from like a 2 or 3 month plan to a 36-month plan. I mean, that's just, you can't, like, if it's raining outside, you can't go outside and play. Right now it's raining, and this is just a storm. And in Florida, we have hurricanes. So they tell you the hurricane's coming. You don't know necessarily. Then you get some sprinkles, and then the rain comes, but then eventually it moves on. This is just on a longer time scale. So I think people just need to kind of work on their perspective and stop. You know, we have a news cycle that's a 24-hour news cycle instead of a news cycle that's, you know, a year-long, you know, and that's like how wrestling booking should be. You know, they should be thinking the year-long, with year-long plans instead of week-long plans or month-long plans. And so for people planning this pandemic out, you know, just put on your 3-year thinking hats and, like, think of where you want to be at the end of this 3 years, so you can pounce on the opportunities when we can have fans in front of us, we can shake hands, we can high five, we can yell in somebody's face. I mean, wrestling, there's spit flying, there's blood. It's not made for pandemic. So, you know, maybe people used to never believe in, like, what studio wrestling or like this kind of like wrestling in front of no fans. Now everybody's wrestling in front of no fans. The WWE used to make fun of all the indie wrestlers. Oh, you wrestle in front of nobody at a bingo hall. Well, guess who's filming shows in front of nobody at a school or whatever. I mean, it's funny how what people protest against, they end up becoming. So it's just smart just for guys just to be working hard, and then eventually the fog will clear and it'll be safe to go and rumble again.
Yeah. Last 2 questions here. Does the TNT Championship Open Challenge interest you?
Yeah, I mean, I really think my students Fabu Andre and Too Tough Tony Donati would be awesome contenders for it. I mean, I've had some good matches with Cody, and I love working with him. And the only thing I've said about this is if he gets Arn Anderson in his corner, I want Malenko in my corner, and then we can go. You know, I mean, I've idolized Dean Malenko since I was young. I've always looked up to him. He was one of the guys that believed in me when I first got to WWE, and it really helped me get my confidence up right when I got there. So yeah, if I do this TNT Championship, and it really reminds me of what Cena was doing with the U.S. title when me and Cody were kind of young guys in WWE, where he was given this opportunity to so many people. So I really like the concept of it. You know, I mean, I think it's pretty neat. I don't know if I'm in the contenders for it, but it would be like, you know, I mean, I think anybody who gets the honor to wrestle in that AEW ring is pretty lucky. And I mean, for me, it's like I saw like Mike Chioda debuted as referee, and I popped huge for that because I love having good refs. And personally, I'd probably, like there's Rick Knox and Bryce up there. There's just so many great people to work with at AEW. Like if I got a chance to get wrestle for that TNT championship, I'd be like, oh, listen, whether I win or lose, can I come back next week? I mean, it just seems like a place where there's a lot of good matches for me.
Yeah. And then finally, other than yourself, who would you list as the top 3 current high-flying wrestlers in the business today?
Ricochet, Pac, high-flying wrestlers. Ricochet and Pac, high flyers. Who else is good? Wait, did we already say me? No, I'm just kidding.
We did. We said other than yourself.
Great high flyers. I think, oh man, that's tough because it's like all 3 of the Rascals I think are awesome. I think, well, you know what? Okay, let's go Ricochet, Pac, and Ray Phoenix. Huh? You can't. I mean, Ray Phoenix is just in a league of his own. Like and he's for sure at the top of my list. Morrison's got to be up there. So okay, we'll do 4. I'll put Morrison in there with Ricochet and Pac and Ray Phoenix.
Awesome.
And Jack Evans of all time. Jack Evans is possibly like the best of all time.
There you go. There you go. So you have your store at prowrestlingtees.com/Matt Sydal. Fans can buy all your merchandise there. How can people find you on social media?
Yeah, at Matt Sydal on Instagram, MattsYdal. Hit me up on Instagram. Find Evan on Twitter, FINDEVAN. Twitter.com/.
And Matt will be in the ROH Pure Title Tournament coming up here soon. So make sure to check that out. Matt, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Raj. Anytime.